outside, I see the born of no return. It's just ahead now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just
All right, it's Tuesday again. Tuesday, February 17th, 2015. And yes, for those of you who pay attention to such things, I missed last week's broadcast. You know, my apologies to everybody who was waiting patiently, all three of you. But yeah, I had a miserable cold. Matter of fact, I've been kind of under the weather for a couple of weeks now. And, you know, last week I was feeling pretty good, but, you know, I did a few sound checks just before time to do the broadcast. And, you know, my voice kind of sounded like Donald Duck after a 3-day bender. So it didn't seem like I was going to be able to pull it off properly. As a matter of fact, my voice is still a little bit froggy. I'm just going to have to put up with it. And I may at some point during tonight's presentation go into a wild spasm of coughing and sneezing, as it appears this thing is, you know, still hanging in there. It's you know, I haven't quite got it beat yet, but I'm working on it. Not sure how the weather is where you've been, but we got a little bit of a surprise last night. You know, I've been kind of shrugging my shoulders, you know, hearing about all this, you know, snowmageddon and avalanches and blizzards, you know, and it seems just a couple hundred miles north of me, they're really getting pounded. I heard reports that up in Boston just since January, you know, they've had like 7 feet of snow. Wow, you know. But yeah, last night it started snowing a little bit here just south of the Mason-Dixon line in Northern Virginia. And I think we got our first really substantial snow of the winter season overnight. I think we might have gotten 6 inches here where I am. You know, those poor folks up in Boston and folks up in Buffalo, New York, you know, they're like, oh, you're complaining over 6 inches? Boy, I wish. You know, I suspect they're still digging out of, you know, the snow they got 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's kind of, you know, Boston, 7 feet of snow since January. Where do they put all that snow? You know? Now, here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, you know, people come here from all over the country, and frankly, we kind of laugh because, you know, I think we get a lot of drivers in the Washington metropolitan area that are from southern states that have never seen a snowflake. In our area, all it takes is the threat of snow to cause people on the roads to turn into absolute idiots. They forget how to drive. Needless to say, today I just battened down the hatches. I said, to hell with it. I stayed indoors, not because I was particularly concerned with it. You know, the roads were clear. They plowed my street, you know, by this morning, and you know, luckily the wife got out and shoveled the drive. I'm afraid if I got out there and tried to shovel 6 inches of snow off my driveway, I'd probably have a heart attack. But she got us shoveled out. She went into work. You know, the roads were reasonably clear, no problem. But I always get a little bit concerned about the drivers on the road in this area. You know, up in the northern states where they're accustomed to snow, they'd look at the little bit that we had and they'd laugh at it. You know, they wouldn't even worry about firing up the 4x4. You know, they'd take the old Dodge. That's just how it is. But here in this area, you got to be particularly concerned about the people who have these the big brand new SUVs that have never driven a four-wheel drive vehicle and they think they're absolutely invulnerable out there. They're the ones that seem to cause most of the problems. So much for my weather reports and tirades about people who forget how to drive when a snowflake hits the ground. We got some real news to talk about tonight. A few interesting articles came up. Here in the United States, we've got this plethora of three-letter boys who are supposed to be ensuring our security. Now, in theory, the government of the United States was established by we the people with the sole responsibility of ensuring our civil rights. Yes, it was something of a departure from previous forms of government. Governments in the past were set up for the specific benefit of a ruling class, for the king or the warlord or whatever, and the peasants were entitled to whatever rights and privileges the king or warlord or whoever decided that they were entitled to. And the king could, on a whim, take your rights away because, that's just the way things were. When the United States was founded, they used a slightly different philosophy for it. No, they said, look, all rights are retained by sovereign individuals who jointly come together and agree to delegate certain responsibilities to a government with the express intent that that government will be there to protect the rights and privileges of the individual sovereign citizen. Now, that was the idea. And for some years it kind of worked. Now, there's always been pushing and shoving. There's always been those in government who felt that because of their high office, it's kind of like Animal Farm. All animals are created equal, but pigs are just a little more equal than others. And, it's always, there's always been a little pushing and shoving. But in general, a reasonable balance has been maintained. And the rights and privileges of the individual sovereign citizen of the United States have only suffered minor incursions by government. Then there was this thing called 9/11. And we had Patriot Acts and Department of Homeland Security, which sounds like something right out of the Third Reich playbook. And, all these new three-letter boys come along, not to protect your civil liberties, not to ensure the government does not infringe on your rights as a sovereign citizen, but in the name of security, to make you more secure from evil terrorists, most of whom appeared at the time to be Arabs. Okay? Well, some, welcomed and just, without any hesitation, handed over their rights to government. Now all of a sudden you got to stand in line, be sexually abused or perhaps irradiated to prove that you're not a evil terrorist trying to board an airplane. All these new agencies have yet to catch one real terrorist. Now, you get the FBI out there thumping their chest all the time about how they stopped this terrorist thing and they stopped that terrorist thing. When you really look at it closely, and you find that the terrorist that they were able to stop was actually, some sap that was talked in to doing something nefarious by the FBI. So the only terrorist attacks they've really been able to stop have been those that they instigated in the first place. Then we get this NSA thing, build this, big center out in Utah somewhere. Apparently they use more water than half the state to keep their computers cool. And we hear rumors that they're supposed to be able to record every keystroke you do on your computer, every phone call you make, all your email. Why are they interested in such nonsense? I mean, these guys must not have a real life that they would spend that much time, energy, and of course, your money to be so nosy about your personal business. But when it comes right down to it, have they ever really been able to stop any cyber terrorist that you know of? Now, for an example, I don't know about you, but every time I open up my email, there's got to be, 10, 15 advertisements for, fake Rolex watches, 8, 10, 15 advertisements for some sort of male potency enhancement gizmos or drugs. I wonder who it was that ratted me out, but that's okay. You get all this crap in your email, some of which, your little antivirus thing on your computer lights up and says, warning, 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 Will Robinson, danger, danger. So, have you ever heard of the NSA or the CIA or the FBI or any of those three-letter boys actually putting it to some of the real cyber criminals out there? Yeah. Is there any evidence that they've been able to stop the Nigerian, Queen of the May scam? You know that one where hey, I'm trying to smuggle about $10 million out of Nigeria, and I just need a little help getting it from Nigeria to this bank over here in London. And if you send me, $5,000, I'll cut you in for 10% of the 10 million. Yeah. You wouldn't believe how many people are still getting suckered into that thing today. Now, do any of these three-letter boys, any of them done anything about the real, honest-to-God criminals that are out there that use the internet to prey on people? No. Well, now, according to RT, Kaspersky Labs. Are you familiar with Kaspersky Labs? They're a Russian antivirus firm, kind of like Symantec or McAfee, but these guys come out of Russia, and they've got a pretty good antivirus program. And I'm not going to do any kind of advertisement or promotion for Kaspersky, but frankly, if you're looking for a good antivirus program that can find the kind of viruses that most often infect U.S. or European countries, Kaspersky's pretty good. Somehow they seem to be a little bit lax on the viruses that are most common in Russia. Can't possibly figure out why. But according to Kaspersky, banks primarily in Russia, but also in the EU and in the United States, have suffered losses of darn near $1 billion with a B. The hacker network behind an unprecedented $1 billion attack on banks took control of financial systems by first sending out emails with malware in a Microsoft Word file. Yeah, so apparently these banking institutions either do not have proper antivirus software or whatever, not sure, but apparently the way these criminals gain their initial access into these banking institutions is to send them a Word file, usually by masquerading as somebody that this banking institution has a relationship with, like maybe another bank. A good hacker knows how to masquerade as somebody else. It looks like it came from a domain that you're buddies with. It's like Bank of America getting an email from BB&T. So this is somebody you might have a business relationship, maybe a vendor or something like that. So it's a trusted source. You think, hey, this might be something that I need to look at. And of course, as soon as you open up this Microsoft Word file, a Trojan horse is installed on the bank's computer system that gives them access to information that apparently allowed them to make off with an average of about $10 million for every bank they hit. Kaspersky says that they've been able to identify $300 million in losses that banking institutions around the world have suffered, but that they're guessing that the total might actually be closer to $1 billion. Now, this is an example of a real, honest-to-God cyber criminal activity, the type of thing that as an American citizen who pays an awful lot in taxes, something that you would hope that your law enforcement agencies would actually be able to handle, take care of, bring those guys in. Let's put those guys on, let's get them on trial, But they're more interested in finding naked pictures of your significant other. Seem to be much more interested in that than actually going after real cyber criminals. Some head honcho of the NSA was up before Congress recently, and I think Congress put basically the same question. Then, how many criminals have you guys brought in with all this, high-tech snooping and surveillance and all this other nonsense you guys been doing for, what's the net payout? And they said, well, we're not really interested in criminals specifically. We're interested in interesting people like you. What do you think of that? Yeah. Sets my BS alarm to be screaming. But they're not interested in criminals specifically. They're just interested in interesting people. Meanwhile, real cyber criminals make off with $1 billion that eventually you'll pay for. You'll pay for it in higher banking fees or higher interest or whatever. I mean, you don't really think these banks are going to take it on the chin. No. They'll find some way to make sure that in the end you pay, even though it was their sloppy computer administration that allowed the initial assault in the front door in the first place. Now, Kaspersky was in the news yet again. This one was reported by PC World here in the United States. Apparently, these Kaspersky guys are trying to make a name for themselves. I remember way back when, about the only antivirus software that we really trusted was Symantec. Well, it wasn't even Symantec back then. It was Norton Antivirus. Yeah, we always trusted them. And they made a name for themselves early on by, every week announcing that they had, discovered some new virus, and they got a lot of press over this in the computer trade magazines. And they kind of built a reputation for being the go-to guys for good antivirus software. Now, of course, a lot of us, in the background were saying, gee, I wonder how many of these viruses were actually released by Symantec or Norton, so that, they could thump their chest and brag about how they'd found it. But that's neither here nor there. I never saw any convincing evidence of that, but that's always been a rumor going around that the antivirus software publishers were engaged in producing viruses to establish their creds, as you will, with the computer community. Look at this new virus we found. Don't tell them that we made it. Well, Kaspersky's, I think, on some kind of a marketing bend, because they one right after another, they've been coming out with very interesting announcements related to your computer and your computer security. Now, everybody out there who's got a computer knows what software is, right? Now, I'm sure you're also aware that there's this thing called firmware. We usually think in terms of a machine BIOS or the code that's burned into a chip on your video card that makes the video card do its dance. Well, your hard drive also has firmware that provides an interpreter for the instruction set that lets your computer find the little points of data that it's looking for on the hard drive. You know, there's got to be kind of a table where it can do a lookup. I want this particular file. Okay, that file is stored on what clusters on the hard drive? Chances are I got to assemble it from clusters spread out all over the drive. How do I put everything together? Well, the firmware in the hard drive tells the controller, tells the computer how it can put files together. I think we're going to come up on a break here just momentarily, and there is a little bit more to this story. So I'll have to finish up this one on the other side of the break. Let's see. I should hear the music now. Okay. I'm almost afraid to get too far into this story because, you know, there are some significant punchlines to it, and I know it's going to happen. There's the music. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about this computers, hard drives, and firmware on the other side of this break. You stand by now. All righty, and we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption of the evening's discussion. Now we're talking about computers, talking about hacking. We understand the difference between software and firmware. Firmware is the low-level software. Your computer's BIOS is firmware. It's code that's burned right into a chip. And the initial instructions to get the hard drive spinning, read your operating system, load that up, and get ready to run other software, like, say, you know, your broadcast software. I'm using a piece called Wirecast from Telestream to do this live video broadcast. That is software. Okay? Firmware is that low-level code that's usually burned right onto a chip. Most of the devices in your computer, your network adapter, your video card, and of course the low-level BIOS on the computer, and even something as mundane as your hard drive, have their own unique firmware burned onto a chip, and this becomes the interface that allows your software, your operating system, for example, to talk to this low-level stuff without having to go right down and tickle the chips. Well, what Kaspersky has discovered is that a group that they refer to as the equation group. This is just, you know, the nickname that Kaspersky's given. There is certain similarities between the types of software, the types of malicious code that they're discovering. These fellows have a penchant for really sophisticated encryption algorithms using long, complex equations. So Kaspersky has dubbed them the equation group. And there are a number of versions of malware that have many of the same signature elements. All right, now, most any kind of hack attack, if it's done by the same guy or the same group, programmers are inherently lazy. If they find a chunk of code that works and works well, they reuse it over and over and over again. And what Kaspersky has discovered is that some malicious code that has been embedded directly in the firmware of almost every consumer hard drive sold in the last 10 years or so includes this malicious code that it has very unique signature elements that are very similar to some other malicious codes, like, say, the Stuxnet thing. Okay? Now, when it comes to writing malicious code, you got your, script kiddies who, they get a kit that they download off the internet that, it's basically a, like a building block assembly thing, where you take this piece and put it here, you take this piece and put it there, you write a little bit of custom code, but you put it in this wrapper that's ready-made script that can do some malicious antics. Okay, they're the lowest level. I mean, frankly, these are rarely cyber criminals, if you will. They're just, malicious little nasty kids, kind of like the ones who, used to vandalize, things, used to, go out and paint, their initials on public edifices and things. It's just nasty, malicious little kids. They rarely do it for the money. Sometimes they do it for their 15 minutes of Andy Warhol style fame, but generally, we're talking a fairly unsophisticated attack. Then just above them, you have the real, honest-to-God cyber criminals who use such techniques to make a living. I mean, to them, this is serious. That $1 billion that's been bilked out of the banking industry, that's real, honest-to-God cyber criminals. These guys thought about it for a long, long time. They figured out a way to use their technical skills to make a lot of money. In their case, $1 billion. And of course, for all of our prowess in spying on you, we're absolutely impotent when it comes to arresting a real cyber terrorist who does real damage. Can't be bothered with that. Want to see that naked picture you got on your hard drive of your significant other. That we're much more interested in that than tracking down real cyber criminals. Now, above these hackers for pay, the guys who are in it for the money, above them, you've got certain nation states within the world who feel that they're above the law and should be able to just spy on everybody, see everything, and that nothing should be hidden from them. I mean, if you've got nothing to hide, why should you be afraid of the government snooping around inside your computer? I mean, you got nothing to hide? What are you worried about? That's the argument they would like to use. The counter argument that, hey, it's none of your damn business. Why are you so damn nosy? That doesn't seem to hold any water with these fellas. They're stuck in this argument that, hey, if you got nothing to hide, you shouldn't mind us, just cruising around inside your computer without your permission, without having to go before a judge and get a warrant. What, you been up to something? It appears, according to Kaspersky, that these modifications to firmware in consumer-grade hard drives, this malicious code that has been tucked away, burned right into the chips, it appears that this was done with the knowledge of the hard drive manufacturers. Hard drives that are specifically known to be impacted are from Seagate, Western Digital, Toshiba, Hitachi, basically the biggest names in consumer hard drive space. Okay? So, these companies have cooperated with the hackers. Now, if you was a betting man and you're sitting at the tables in Las Vegas and you were offered these countries as suspects for having done this business to get spying software built right into the hard drive that you pay your good money for, okay, if your choices were the United States of America, Israel, Pakistan, Iran, China, Russia, Romania, who would you be betting on? Who would you put your hard-earned money on the table and make the bet? According to Kaspersky, the code used in this hard drive scheme has NSA written all over it. So it looks like this is yet another U.S. operation. Now, do I know this 100% for a fact? No. No. Don't know it for a fact. But apparently the code used in this hard drive Trojan is very similar to known examples that were created by our own three-letter boys over at the NSA. Don't you just love it? So you get to pay the money, to pay the salaries, then you get to buy the hard drive, and it's all a big scheme just to see what you got on your computer. You might have done something naughty, you know. And if you ain't done nothing naughty, what are you worried about? You know, ain't no biggie. Now, you know, when I'm doing my broadcast, you know, there's kind of a running joke. Oops. I guess I'll have to get to the running joke right after this next round of commercial announcements. We will be back with a little bit more barking at the moon right after these important commercial announcements. All right, and we're back. You know, all this bad news about hacking. Everybody's out there going to have a can of Raid going over their computer keyboard tonight, thinking that's going to help. But hey, you know, around here we have a running joke between myself and the guys in the chat room about you know, the black Suburban parked out in front of my house every night. I do one of these broadcasts, you know, and the only way I can keep them from messing with my internet connection or something, you know, it's take them you know, some donuts with pink icing and sprinkles on it, you know. So you know, there's been you know, many years of donut jokes on my broadcast, but tonight, you know, I've got a donut joke that's real. Sometimes truth is funnier than fiction, but yeah, this this comes out of the UK. Again, this is reported by RT. American-based donut chain Krispy Kreme has apologized to customers after promoting an ill-titled sales event at a UK location that had been dubbed KKK Wednesday. KKK Wednesday. Okay, I'll, you know, wait a moment to let that sink in. You know, I'm sure that you know, it'll take a moment for the light bulbs to go on over some KKK Wednesday. Okay, all right. I'm sure that at least a few of you out there have gotten it. Basically, what it was, you know, it was perfectly innocent. You know, they started up this thing called the Krispy Kreme Club with a K. You know, they just thought it was kind of cute, and it's kind of one of these loyalty deals where, you know, you buy so many donuts over a period of time, you get a free donut or something like. You know, I mean, come on, all companies come out with these loyalty deals where, you know, if you're a regular customer, they want to reward you for being a regular customer, and I guess in the UK. The implications of calling this the, you know, KKK Wednesday, you know, it just, you know, they're perfectly innocent. I think, oh, it's just a Krispy Kreme club. What's the big deal? You know, we just want to reward our regular customers. But apparently some folks did catch on and took offense. Now, the reason this is humorous is because, okay, these people are in the UK. Okay, now I'm sure that they are somewhat, I'm sure people in the UK are somewhat familiar with what KKK might mean to black people, say, in the south of the United States. I'm sure that, you know, they have some passing understanding of how that, you know, might raise an eyebrow in some communities. But from their point of view, all this was an innocent marketing campaign trying to, you know, drum up a little extra business. You know, we're good capitalists here. We want to sell some extra donuts. You know, we want to reward our regular customers. You know, and apparently they were involved in an absolute avalanche of complaints simply for naming their marketing campaign KKK Wednesday. My point in all this is that, you know, this is how political correctness has gone over the top, you know. Yeah, but, you know, people are going to be people. And if you go around looking for ways to be offended, you're going to find them. And often it's not really the intent of the person who has offended you to cause an offense. It was your extreme sensitivity that really caused the problem. Anyway, that's my opinion on it. You'll have to consider and make up your own damn mind. But you just gotta love it. Have you heard that Obama's immigration thing might have been at least temporarily delayed? Apparently, a judge down in Texas has agreed that Obama went over the line when he, with his pen and cell phone, just by executive edict, decided that we were going to no longer enforce our laws on immigration, that we were just going to totally ignore it. A judge down in Texas apparently has found that to be, yes, overstepping. The executive branch of government is not supposed to legislate; they're supposed to enforce. The Congress produces legislation. It is the president's responsibility to enforce the laws passed by Congress. It's not up to the president to dismiss laws that he's not in favor of and refuse to enforce them. Frankly, if he does not enforce the laws passed by the Congress, he's being negligent in his duties as president and, in theory, should be impeached. Instead of impeachment proceedings against this current imposter-in-chief, our Congress has decided to sue him. So, for the next 2 years that he's president, I suspect they'll be, going back and forth, slinging mud at each other. But, in fact, nothing will get done. Now, a judge in Texas has basically ordered the Immigration and Naturalization arm of the government, the guys who are supposed to be out there protecting our borders, to ignore the president's order and get back to enforcing the law. Okay, there is a law on the books. Just because the president issues an edict that you are not to enforce that law does not relieve you of your responsibility under the law to perform the enforcement task. Of course, it might be pretty hard for him because one of Obama's other orders has been to remove all firearms from these people. So, yeah, they can stand there and maybe yell real loud, Hey, you're not supposed to be here. Go on back home. Let's see how that works out. We're real proud here in the United States about our sophisticated unmanned aerial vehicles. When these things first came along, they were primarily used as surveillance tools. They were fairly small. They were intended for situational awareness on the battlefield, as military guys like to call it. They'd fly a drone over there with cameras and they'd be able to see where the bad guys are. And, so most of us kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, that's pretty benign. And then the Terminator movies came out and we all said, holy cow. They might actually be able to do that, And sure enough, not long after the Terminator movies became a low-budget hit at the box office, a fictional scenario started to look more and more like real-life true, And now we do indeed have drones that are sophisticated enough that, a fella sitting in an air-conditioned Connex box in McLean, Virginia, can use one of these unmanned aerial vehicles to blow up a wedding party halfway around the world with the push of a button. And it's like playing a video game. As a matter of fact, a lot of the recruiting being done for our military nowadays, they're recruiting video game addicts. You got to kind of wonder if maybe some of these video games weren't produced to train the next generation of combat soldiers. Who knows? Now, so far we don't have walking, talking androids with, pasted on flesh that require a 10 megawatt laser pulse to knock them down. So far, the unmanned aerial vehicles are about the most sophisticated drones that we've seen fielded. We have seen some demonstrations by Boston Dynamics of some walking gizmos that look a little scary. We don't know how development on that's going to go. But, I guess our superiority in the unmanned aerial vehicles is now going to be offered for sale to our allies. Yes, this report also out of RT. I'm using a lot of RT articles tonight. Government officials in the United States say the White House is ready to announce a policy change that will let armed unmanned aerial vehicles or weaponized drones to legally be given to allied nations. So it looks like, here's the deal. If we are going to sell this technology or do a lend-lease or whatever, if we're going to make arrangements to offer these unmanned aerial vehicles to our allies around the world, some say that ISIS may be both an ally and an enemy. We're not sure yet. Another report came out that apparently folks on the ground who may indeed be affiliated with ISIS, but they're fighting against Assad, might now be able to call in B-1 airstrike. It gets very confusing in some parts of the world. But it appears that if we now are willing to lease out or sell our current generation of unmanned aerial vehicles, what is it that they've got that's so much better that they're not yet showing us? Maybe has not yet been fielded for average persons to see. It's like, if they've got the stealth bombers and the stealth fighters, they got something else hidden away. Okay. All right, since 9/11, the United States has fought 4 major wars and probably 137 little minor fracases. Afghanistan was a disaster. Afghanistan is arguably no worse off than it was in 2001, but after losing thousands of American lives and spending trillions of dollars, it's no better off either. Iraq, an even bigger disaster. Saddam Hussein was a uniquely vicious dictator, but even at that, there's not much question that Iraq is worse off today than it was in 2003. We got rid of Saddam, but got ISIS. Libya, another disaster. We got rid of Muammar Gaddafi, but got a Somalia-level failed state in return. Yemen, yet another disaster. After years of drone warfare, Houthi rebels have taken over the government. This appears to be simultaneously a win for Iran, which backs the rebels, and Al-Qaeda, which may benefit from the resulting chaos. Bottom line is, there was a stable government in Iraq under Saddam Hussein. There was a stable government in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi. And like it or not, there was a stable government that had pretty much stopped the opium traffic in Afghanistan. What has all our warfare gotten us? Well, it's gotten us high. We've lost a bunch of people, and that's it. I'm hearing the music in the background. They're jerking me off the stage. I'll be back next week for some more barking at the moon. Good night, y'all. Yeah, I guess we get everything we pay for in our wars, huh? The war in Afghanistan has cost over $1 trillion. $1 trillion. And we still don't have our freaking pipeline. Some say the only reason we went to war in Afghanistan was because the Taliban were they wanted too much money for the right of way to put an oil pipeline in. We said, look, if you guys don't knuckle under and let us have our damn pipeline, we're going to kick your ass. And they basically went like this to us. So we went and we kicked their ass and spent $1 trillion, lost a couple thousand of our people, killed God only knows how many Afghanis. Lord only knows how many Afghans we killed. Now, I know some people in my own chat room. Some people in my own chat room are going to say, oh, here's a freaking sand digger, towel head, they got what they deserved. Come on, An invader from outside comes in to, say, Maryland and starts kicking everybody's ass in Maryland. Now, even though Virginia and Maryland are fighting over the Potomac River and got a bunch of grudges that go back, a couple hundred years, I guarantee you, if an outside force came in and started kicking ass in Maryland, Virginians would be picking up their shotguns and heading up there to help those boys out. So, even though you had all these various factions in Afghanistan, that little warlords, they're fighting against each other like crazy. The United States comes in, outsider comes in and starts kicking ass in Afghanistan. What do you think those boys are going to do? And you betcha that's exactly what they did. They all, forget our old feuds, forget our old fussing and fighting, forget who struck John in the last little fracas. Now we got us all an outside invader. We're all going to get together. We're all going to kick his ass. And all we did really was unify the resistance by moving into Afghanistan that way. You look at what Russia's been doing, and Russia's going around making deals. While the United States has been running around making war, the Russians and the Chinese have been going around the world making deals. Now, if you were a developing nation in Africa, or you were a developing nation in Asia, and you had your choice of hooking up with somebody, either this guy who says, look, you either do what I want you to do, and I'm going to hit you with my stick, or this other guy say, hey, what do you got? We got some of this. Can we trade me some of that for some of this? Who would you invite into your country? Who would you want to buddy up to? This attitude that, we are so much better than everybody else, and if they don't do what we want them to do, we have some God-given right to whack them in the back of the head. I don't care what color they are. I don't care if they're brown skin, black skin, yellow skin, whatever. I don't care. This American bravado where, if they don't do what we want to do, well, that's operating against the U.S. national interest. We ought to have the right to just send a drone in there and kick their ass. Eventually, it's going to make the stars and stripes look to a lot of people like the swastika. Is that how you want your nation to be remembered in history? When 1,000 years from now, when people are talking about this period in time, is that how you want the United States to be remembered in history? You consider and make up your own damn mind. Well, what do you think, guys? What hot topic in the news did I neglect? All right, I believe our military should take out the leaders that start wars in the first place. They'd have to be shooting our own leaders. Let's face it. You look at most of the world's trouble in about the last 20, 30 years or so. The United States seems to have its fingers in everybody else's pie, and that's what starts the fracas. Our method of influencing other people is to start a freaking coup d'etat. Well, not really. Zero Fossil Fuel is asking me, do I know of any open source replacement hard drive firmware projects? I suspect it's doable, but it would not be something. Let's put it this way: you can go out and buy a hard drive now for, a big hard drive, a terabyte hard drive you can get for less than $100. I think I've seen them recently for as little as $59 or something equally as ridiculous. And then you'd probably have to spend, another $500-600 to do the custom chipset to get around the NSA's spy mechanism. One thing you can do is you can move to enterprise grade hard drives, not consumer level hard drives. See, there's always the consumer level hard drive that sells for $59 a terabyte, and then there's the enterprise style hard drive. Same capacity, probably sells for like $200. Then you use RAID to, some sort of RAID card. I kind of like the LSI RAID chip, but there's others out there that are perfectly fine. And then on top of that, you use some sort of encryption. Now, if you use the Microsoft encryption, the EFS file system, that's well known. That's easy to decrypt. I mean, even I could decrypt that, so that's not really any sophisticated protection. The key to it is to write your data to the hard drive using some sort of an encryption algorithm that you devise. Where I would spend my money on something that would not be in trying to develop my own hard drive controller to put on the bottom of my hard drive, or my own firmware to burn onto the chip. I don't think I'd put my money there. I think I would put my money in figuring out a really unique way to encrypt my hard drive so that only I would have the key. Microsoft would not have the key. The NSA would not have the key. Frankly, if you do that, it's going to be so difficult, so time-consuming, so costly for somebody to try to grab data, even if they have a backdoor into your computer. Trying to decrypt the data would be so costly. The chances are they'll find a softer target. SSDs never erase. Well, you can erase them. The problem with SSDs is that they have a limited number of read-write cycles. Now, the current NAND gate chips that they're using on some of the better quality SSDs, they have a mean time between failure that's about 10 times that of a spinning platter hard disk. So I don't even worry about the read-write life expectancy of SSDs anymore. I used to. That used to be a concern back in the old days when I was doing embedded computers. I was always concerned that I was going to read and write to that SSD more times than what it was designed to take, and just fail. Nowadays, I'm not nearly as worried about that. And yes, there are software utilities that can erase an SSD, most certainly. Even a hard drive, on a conventional spinning hard drive, you hit delete on your operating system. That file is not really deleted. Most any first-year computer sciences guy knows how to recover the files. You got to literally go back and write zeros to every position on the hard drive. And even then, there is a latent magnetic structure to the hard drive that can be recovered. Load the sys to the SSD to run. I'm not sure what you mean. I do load an operating system here. I think I've got an example here. Yeah, see this little computer here? That computer represents my telephone system. And that's a little tiny embedded computer that has, I think, 120 gigabyte SSD in it. And the operating system and everything loads from the SSD. SSDs I like particularly in embedded computers. An embedded computer typically will have no fan and preferably no moving parts whatsoever. So even a spinning hard drive bothers me. That's the type of machine you generally put something like that together, and it should run for 5, 6, 7 years without you don't want any moving parts in a machine like that at all. So a lot of the routers and firewalls and phone systems that I do, the custom stuff that I do, I'll use an SSD and a fanless processor. These days, you can get dual core, and even there's a new 8-core Atom processor out from Intel that does not require a cooling fan. If you've got a big enough heat sink on it. So it's nowadays it's pretty simple to put together a fairly powerful computer that does not require any moving parts, which is what you want in applications like routers and firewalls and phone systems, stuff of that nature. The SSDs are really nice for that type. The other thing SSDs are nice for is, of course, they're a good bit faster than traditional hard drives, and they typically will last a lot longer. But of course, they're a lot more expensive. Yeah, and there's another technology that's just now starting to be spoken of. Did you know that DNA can carry data? Yes. There are scientists working on a mechanism for encoding data into biological DNA. They've been able to encode the data, embed the DNA in a like a silicon wafer, and some say that once the data is recorded using that method, you should be able to go back 1 million years in the future and decrypt the data encoded into the DNA. There's a lot of DNA in the human genome that nobody can figure out what the hell it does. We've got a whole bunch of DNA that other primates do not have. And a lot of people kind of scratch their heads and say, okay, we know which DNA gives them brown hair. We know which one gives them blue eyes. We know which one does their skin color. We know which one does this. We know which one does that. But what's all this other gobbledygook over here on the end? And you sometimes wonder if maybe somebody, perhaps a higher power, didn't leave the secrets of the universe and coded into what is often referred to as junk DNA in the human genome. Who knows? That's one you'll have to consider and make up your own damn mind. But yes, the storage density possible with using DNA as a storage medium is right now estimated to be on the order of billions of times more dense than any other storage mechanism we know of. ATT Gigapower versus Google. Not sure about that. 4096 parallel processor. Wow. Are you talking 4096 cores in IBM's True North processor? Wow. How many licenses to Windows Server 2012 will I need to support that chip? That's kind of a giggle because one of Microsoft's popular server operating systems is licensed by the number of cores. So if you get if you want to build a machine to support multiple Hyper-V sessions, say you want to put Hyper-V on a Windows server, and you decide to get 4 8-core Xeon processors in there, so you got lots of CPU cores to support your virtual machines. The licensing issues of the Windows operating system become an absolute nightmare, and making sure you get it all sorted out right. It's just I'll have to read that article. Yeah, that could be interesting. 4096 cores, each core running at about 2 gigahertz or better. I mean, if you because I've seen some of this new little Atom CPU, which is cheap. I mean, it's dirt cheap. You can buy, a little bare bones 1U rack mount computer using this 8-core Atom processor. I think Supermicro has one out there. The base machine's about $500. So you add some SSDs and some other toys to it, and maybe you got $1,200 in this computer, and very powerful. It has 8 real cores, 16. It'll run 16 sessions, simultaneously, and each core gets 2.4 gigahertz. That's a pretty darn powerful little computer when you think about it for such low money. But, 4,096 cores, man. All right, guys, come on, help me out here. What other hot items in the news? I was so caught up with the cyber terrorism and how NSA kind of let us down. We spent all this money on NSA supposedly to protect us from all the real villains on the internet, and they're absolutely powerless. They're absolutely impotent to do what we would like them to do. But man, I tell you what, they got every which way they can snoop on you. But as far as catching the real crooks out there, that guy in Nigeria is laughing. That guy with all the scams coming out of Nigeria. But he's got a whole bunch of Rolex watches to sell you. That's for sure. Watson may be having his religious conflicts now. I'm not sure who Watson is, but I'll figure it out. Well, anybody who, I'm looking at this thing about, everybody's, the dark web, the dark web's been out there forever, It's, everybody who knows the dark web knows what it is, has never had any problem. Frankly, the dark web doesn't particularly want to be found by your typical, Google consumer search, but those who need to know about the dark web know about the dark web. Including law enforcement. ATT, everybody's putting links in there. Okay, how David Carr interview Snowden, huh? Well, here's the thing. When all these revelations came out about what Snowden was talking about, Snowden has yet to say anything that I found to be a surprise. I mean, the stuff that Snowden has talked about has pretty much been out there. The fact is, about all Snowden really did was legitimize a lot of the conspiracy theory that many of us have had for many years. I mean, we knew way back in the 90s during the, when Carnivore, remember something called Carnivore? It was rumored that the NSA and Australian intelligence and British intelligence were, doing all this snooping on people's phone calls, and they called this thing Carnivore. Remember that? That was back in the 90s, man. We all knew it was going on. The fact is, we never had an insider come forward and blow the whistle, which basically validated what we already knew. And everything that's come out of Snowden, it's all stuff that has been rumored to have been going on. There's rumors have been flying around about this stuff for a long time. Even this this most recent thing that Kaspersky came out with about the BIOSes, the low-level BIOS code that was malicious. Most of us knew about that back in the 90s. We knew this type of stuff went on. There were always there were hackathons to dissect the code in a lot of video cards and a lot of other components, hard drives included, to find undocumented, what we used to refer to as undocumented commands. And there were guys who'd come to the hackers forum and they say, "Hey, I found out a way to speed up Seagate hard drives 20%. All you got to do is issue this command," and these were totally undocumented commands that the operating system didn't know about and couldn't make use of. But if you knew how to write low-level driver software, you weren't actually going down messing with the chip level stuff. You were writing an intermediary, the driver software that told the operating system how to talk to the hard drive. So basically, if you were somebody who knew how to write assembly language code or C-level code for low-level driver type applications, you could write specialty code that could take advantage of these undocumented features in a lot of these. Well, a lot of guys would come to I found some undocumented code in this hard drive here, and I can't figure out what the hell it's doing. And this code was being passed around. Everybody was looking at it and said, damn, this looks like some kind of, back-end read program. Like maybe it's a piece of software that helps you recover your hard drive if it's failed. Maybe you send your hard drive in to try and get data off of it after the hard drive's failed. Maybe something that helps. But there were a lot of us looking at it and said, boy, this really does look suspicious. This is a suspicious hunk of code. There's also code in in ATI and what's the other popular one? NVIDIA video cards that is very suspicious. And it almost looks like it's a mechanism that does screen captures and sends them God only knows where. So we know about this stuff. It's just every once in a while we get somebody like a Kaspersky or somebody like a Snowden that comes forward and actually confirms it and puts a name on it. This is what the NSA calls this program, and it started here, and it's run by so and so, and this is and all they're really doing is they're confirming what we already pretty much knew, or at the very least suspected. So that's the truth of it. I mean, I don't see anything coming out of Snowden so far that wasn't already common knowledge in some circles. Truth with proof. Absolutely heinous. Yeah, I agree with you, Maury. It's a conspiracy theory until somebody like Snowden comes out and validates it, huh? There's also the possibility that this guy Snowden, could be an inside guy, and he's telling us what they want us to know. I don't know. I really don't know. A lot of people say that about Assange with WikiLeaks. They say, he's just another arm of the government. He's spreading disinformation. So, again, you're going to have to consider make up your own damn mind. I can tell you that the factual portions of what Snowden has released were indeed pretty much common knowledge. Need to animate you. Oh, you want to see the fire burning in my fake fireplace, huh? I could do that. I'll have to think about it. Or I could always just switch over to my Star Trek Enterprise. Be in the engineering section of the Enterprise. Whatever. It's just eye candy to keep you amused anyway. All right, checking this chat room. The chat seems to have slowed down. So apparently I covered everything in the news that was important for us to discuss. Is that right? I didn't miss any of it. Like this interesting article I pulled off of CNN.com. Yeah, see, the secret world of government debt collection. If you owe money on, say, a credit card, these collection agencies can go so far, but there are consumer protection rules out there. If you handle yourself right in a collection situation, you're still going to wind up having to pay the debt, but you can send the bill collectors packing. Unless they're collecting on a parking ticket, or maybe a toll that you owe, or maybe some property tax. Apparently, if a collection agency is operating on behalf of a government agency trying to collect back taxes or back fees and penalties from a government agency, apparently they are exempt from all consumer protection laws and can basically make your life miserable. And according to CNN.com, they have apparently persuaded some people to commit suicide. Others, they've just flat tortured. But yes, so a collection agency attempting to collect a fine or fee on behalf of a government need not abide by any form of consumer protection law. Isn't that just precious? You know, that was one that I was hoping to get to tonight, but didn't make it. Did not make the cuts. Did you know that Italy is now scared that, seeing as how apparently the guys who kicked out the puppet regime in Libya have now been branded as being ISIS. Well, you know, basically what you had is you had a puppet regime that was installed in Libya after we kicked out Gaddafi. And, you know, the people figured out what was going on. They said, screw this, you know, we don't like these bums, and they threw them out. And they, you know, now the government is actually owned and operated on behalf of the people of Libya once again. Now, there is a little, you know, infighting, some factional disagreements because, you know, Libya is made up of, you know, about a dozen different tribes. And, of course, each one of these tribes is now vying for supremacy. You know, so there is a little pushing and shoving going on in Libya. But, you know, for the most part, all these tribes have decided, hey, you know, Gaddafi, as big an asshole as he was, he had a pretty good idea. You know, we can basically agree to disagree on most issues, but get together on the important issues of how to run the nation of Libya for the benefit of the people of Libya. And by and large, even though they weren't towing the line as far as U.S. and EU interests were concerned, you know, they're attempting to organize a government and pull together, kind of like what was going on under Gaddafi. Gaddafi was a brutal dictator, but he was able to keep all these competing interests in check, make sure that they each got their little piece of the pie. So even though nobody was, you know, sitting in the catbird seat, you know, everybody was reasonably happy. You know, they felt like the government was being responsive to their needs. You know, that balance sometimes takes a jerk to pull off. And yeah, Gaddafi was a jerk, but by and large, Libyan people were doing quite well. They were quite happy. You know, he may have been a jerk, but he was their jerk. And, well, they didn't like our jerk, so now they're attempting to organize a state independent of U.S. and EU interests. Well, because of that, they have now been branded as being ISIS. Okay? I mean, anybody that don't agree with us is ISIS. Even though, you know, these guys have nothing to do with the ISIS group that, you know, is trying to take over Iraq. And but, you know, because they don't agree with our position, our point of view, they have been branded as being ISIS. You know? And now you got Italy coming out saying they're just scared to death that ISIS is going to come across the Mediterranean and kick their ass. You know, so they've organized, you know, 5,000 troops to face off against ISIS of Libya. There is absolutely no proof that ISIS has any influence whatsoever in Libya. What you've got in Libya is patriotic Libyans trying to put a government together. And, you know, once again, for the benefit of the Libyan people instead of the benefit of U.S. banks and oil interests. So is the CIA going after the Pope? I don't know. Well, yes, there was recently an incident in Libya where some Egyptian mercenaries who happened to be Coptic Christians. Egypt had apparently sent mercenaries into Libya on behalf of U.S. EU interests, sent them in there basically to try and have a counter-revolution. And these guys were caught and they were executed in the traditional Muslim manner, which is a beheading. Americans are, so brutalized. We get all upset because these guys, we call them a bunch of head choppers, a bunch of primitives. I'm not sure if, getting hit with a 223 is so much more civilized than having your head cut off. I don't know. I must admit that the beheadings do have a certain shock value. But if you're going to execute a bunch of people, lining them up against a wall and shooting them, I mean, is that really any more civilized than lopping their heads off? Dead is dead. The fact of the matter is, the United States and Egypt are making a big deal out of the fact that these fellows who were executed in Libya were Coptic Christians. They're trying to make it a Muslim-Christian issue. They are not disclosing to anybody that these were mercenaries sent on behalf of Egypt and U.S. interests to foment a counter-revolution in Libya to try to reassert U.S.-EU interests in Libya. And they, what can I say? They got caught. They were executed for their crimes. Okay, I'm thinking you guys have pretty much run out of gas. You have become bored with me. We have gone about a half hour overtime. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we've gone about a half hour overtime. So, before I pack it in for the evening, is there any last-minute issues that we need to discuss before I shut this puppy down? We have been going on for quite a while now. Maury, I wish I knew what all the hype was about 50 Shades. I haven't seen the movie. I remember, back when I was a kid, there was a movie that came out. I forget now what it was called, but it was, it was the first big budget movie where some woman flashed her boobies. Okay, and I forget what the name of the movie was, but it had some big name stars in it, and it was a big dollar production. It wasn't your average cheap 8mm porno. I mean this was I don't know. I'll remember the name when it's no longer interesting conversation. But I remember there was all this hype about this movie. It's so this and it's so that, and the writing was excellent, and the acting was this, and you got to see some boobies. There's just so much hype about this movie that, I don't know, I was a 16, 17-year-old kid. I had to go down and see it, man. And I watched the movie and I said, what's all the big deal about it? This movie sucks. And I'm scared to death that this 50 Shades thing, it's the same, it's got all this hype about how titillating it is and how it's breaking new ground or whatever. I don't know. When it comes out on Netflix, when I can see it for, my Netflix subscription, I'll watch it and let you know. But right now, I'm still remembering that movie from back in the 70s, everybody made such a big deal about. And it turned out the movie sucked. It was boring. There was no story. Oh well. What can I say? We'll just if you see it, Maury, I'll invite you in to do a movie review. But I'm not inclined to waste my money going to see 50 Shades or whatever, because it just. For everything I hear about it, all they can talk about is how it's a bunch of cougars chasing young boys or something like that. I don't know. They haven't yet said anything about it that leads me to believe that there's, any real intrigue or, yeah, it's marketing hype. I believe they have found sex sells, and they're making this thing sound like a 90-minute orgasm or something like that. I don't know. And with that kind of marketing, get everybody excited, chances are they're going to make millions of bucks. But I have this horrible feeling the movie itself sucks. Oh, hey, I did finally see that. Remember that movie we talked about a few weeks ago? The Interview, that one where they go in to kill the boss of North Korea. I finally did see that. They dropped it on Netflix, and they were promoting the hell out of it on Netflix. And I resisted temptation for a couple of weeks, because I just wasn't really that interested in it. But eventually I got down to the point where I had seen everything interesting on Netflix that I really wanted to see. And this thing kept popping up in my face. And I said, oh, hell, I'll go ahead and watch this. Let's see what it's all about. It's not going to cost me anything. I already paid for the damn Netflix. Let me see something for my $8 a month or whatever it costs. And it turned out the movie was indeed mildly entertaining. Okay, now if you're expecting some deep sociological message, or if you're expecting anything more, if you're expecting anything more than a teeny bopper TNA flick with a whole bunch of toilet humor, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But if you're just looking for 90 minutes of mindless entertainment, you might actually enjoy that flick. It was not that bad. It was not as bad as some people had led me to believe. I think that's it, guys. Zero's bagging it. I think he's he's getting droopy-eyed, wants to go to sleep, and must admit, I'm starting to get a little tired myself. I appreciate everybody spending their Tuesday evening with me. Hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. And, if my health holds up, I'll be back next week, and we will do some barking at the moon yet again. Y'all have a good evening. Good night, all.
None of us are leaving here alive. Calling out to you, won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you, won't you turn, won't you turn around?